Tonight, we finally found a billboard that the Toronto police object to. And no, it's not in support of Hamas. It's December 19th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show.
Shame on you, you censorious thug.
You know, I'm Jewish. I grew up in Calgary, which is a very un-Jewish city, very small Jewish community. And I always thought of Toronto as the big city. And it has about 200,000 Jews in it, which coming from Calgary, which had, when I was growing up, maybe 5,000 Jews, seemed huge. Like there's so many Jewish schools and synagogues and kosher restaurants. It seemed like a little slice of Israel or like going to New York itself. That's how it felt. And the Jews were in high stations in life in Toronto. The doctors and lawyers, even politicians. The great mayor Mel Lastman was Jewish. And I think the Jews got along pretty well with people in Toronto. They got into construction with the Italians and they got along with the Greeks. It was sort of a very happy harmony. At least that's what it seemed like to me growing up. The point I'm trying to make is that I looked at Toronto as a pretty Jewish city, or at least a city where it was very easy to be Jewish. Well, that's changed. I'll tell you that now that I'm a resident of Toronto. I live not far from an intersection of Bathurst and Shepherd. Bathurst is a north-south road along which I'd say most of the Jewish community lives. So if you were to start in Midtown and drive north on Bathurst, you could drive for half an hour. And on each side, you would see kosher supermarkets or schools or synagogues. You would see Orthodox Jews with their black hats and whatnot. And you would say, oh, this is the Jewish part of town. There's the Chinatown, there's the Greek town. This is the Jewish part of town. But a few terrible things have started happening since the October 7th, 2023 Hamas terrorist attack on Israel. Now, that was a shocking attack, as you probably know, as the largest death toll, the worst murder of Jews since the Holocaust itself. And that's a terrible thing, and it caused a war. Israel reacted to Hamas in Gaza, and it soon spread throughout the region. But I remember saying in those very early days, I should dig up my old quotes about it, I was far more worried about what's happening in Toronto, in other Canadian cities, in America, in the West, than I am about what's happening in Israel itself, because Israel has a strong military. But more than that, Israel is awake to what's going on. Israel doesn't fool itself thinking diversity is our strength. Israel is, I suppose you could call it multicultural and multiracial. There's people of different backgrounds there and different religions, but it is very alert and awake to the risks involved there. Not us here in Canada. We have a completely porous border. And over the last, I'd say 20 years, we have brought in so many people who, simply put, have brought anti-Semitism with them, and a number have brought violence, or at least extreme political activism with them. What's worse is they have been activated by foreign agents. For years, it's been reported that the government of Iran has used Canada as their playground, where they can whip up anti-Semitic meetings on short notice. Well, that went into high gear after October 7th. Before Israel even reacted and responded to the attack from Gaza, there were marches throughout Toronto condemning the Jews, threatening the Jews, accusing the Jews of horrendous things, and calling for a genocide of the Jews. They would use words that might seem cryptic to ordinary Canadians, like from the river to the sea. But that just means extinguishing all Jews within its geography, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Globalize the Intifada. Intifada is an Arabic word meaning pogrom, or a riot. And those ideas have started to come true in the West, most atrociously just the other day in Bondi Beach in Australia, where two Muslim migrant terrorists shot dead and wounded dozens of Jewish Australians. We haven't had a massacre on that scale in Canada yet, but I fear it's only a matter of time. As you know, a Jewish day school in Toronto called Beis Chaya Mushka has been attacked on 3 separate occasions by gunshots. A synagogue on Bayview Avenue in Toronto has been vandalized on 10 separate occasions. as you know, we've covered it quite regularly, pro-Hamas protesters walk through Jewish residential communities shouting at men, women, and children they encounter in the streets. There have been vandalisms, uttering of threats, assaults, and all sorts of other mischief. And to see the way that they've been treated with kid gloves as compared to, say, the truckers is astonishing. And that's the subject of my monologue today. I've seen how the police can react when they want to. I've seen them brutally arrest and jail and punish the truckers. I've seen what they've done to the men in Coutts, Alberta, some of whom are still in prison. That's what the government does to politically disfavored groups. In the case of Tamara Leach, people who oppose forced vaccines or forced lockdowns. Those are the worst people. But people who walk through Jewish communities, and these are foreign nationals, mind you. These aren't fellow Canadian citizens. I don't think fellow Canadian citizens would even do that. These are foreign nationals under the direction of foreign governments walking through our streets in Canada and screaming anti-Semitic abuse at people. It's outrageous, but it has been tolerated for 2 years. And in the wake of the Bondi massacre, a lot of people in Canada said, oh my God, we're next. We're so obviously going to be next. One of the things that I think upset me the most about Bondi Beach in Australia was that the Jewish community, which had gathered to celebrate Hanukkah on the beach, they had guards. I think they had 5 guards there, but they were unarmed. What use is that? Are you going to challenge a terrorist to an arm wrestle or something? If you don't have a firearm, what exactly are you other than an usher or something? Well, it's the same thing here in Canada. There are dozens of Jewish schools and synagogues and Jewish centers, community centers, and none of them have armed guards. An armed terrorist, like we saw in Australia, would cut through them like a hot knife through butter. And gun crime is rampant in Ontario. It's not hard, and the rest of the country too. It wouldn't be hard for a terrorist to get a hold of a firearm and do horrific things in Canada, just like they did in Australia. And so the last week in Toronto has been interesting, as the Jewish community realizes what happened in Bondi Beach could just as easily have happened in Canada. And if we don't do anything about it, it probably will. Now that sparked this interesting conversation on radio, where Canada's pro-Hamas mayor, Olivia Chow, Toronto's pro-Hamas mayor, who refuses to show up at most events, who is so totally dedicated to the pro-Hamas movement, she, obviously feeling the scrutiny, was asked why none of these pro-Hamas protesters are charged. They utter threats. They block roads and sidewalks. They commit assault. They violate noise regulations with their PA systems where they shout at Jews. And I'm not even talking about the actual hate crimes. I'm talking about the crimes. Why have there been so few, if any, charges? Well, here's what the mayor said.
So at some point they said they have a lawyer that at the police headquarters that looked at cases and said, okay, there's no hope of you getting anywhere, so don't bother. So which is why sometimes they don't do charges. And I think the chief is coming to your...
He's here tomorrow. He'll be in that chair.
Yeah, exactly. Ask him about that.
I'm never confident it's a very comfortable chair, but...
Ask him about that, because I've asked exactly the same thing. Why can't you arrest more and charge more? There's the human rights, the charter rights concern, and that some of the charges basically thrown out. So why keep doing it if it doesn't work?
Right.
The mayor, in other words, is implying that she thinks there should be charges laid, but there aren't, and it's because of the bloody police department, and in particular, there's a lawyer at the police department named Falguni Debnath who won't let any charges go through. Well, that's quite newsy, isn't it? Well, next up was Toronto's police chief, who was invited on the same channel to answer, and he said that the mayor was making it up. Well, he didn't quite use that language, but he basically called her a liar. Here, take a listen.
And when the mayor says that there is a lawyer who has advised, do not engage, do not arrest, is she in error?
Well, listen, I don't know where she's getting that narrative
from. She says you.
Yeah, well, we didn't have a discussion that would suggest quite the way that's been framed. So
the mayor is saying there ought to be charges, but the general counsel, the senior lawyer at the police, is stopping them before they can be made. And the police chief is saying that ain't true. Well, our friend Joe Warmington wrote about this in the Toronto Sun and named the general counsel, the lawyer involved. I mentioned her name a moment ago, Falguni Debnath. Now, not a lot is known about her. I've seen reports that she was born in Pakistan and that she worked once at the United Nations in some sort of war crimes inquiry. And those three things aren't necessarily alarm bells, but when you have someone who comes from Pakistan, which is an inherently anti-Semitic country, it's an Islamic supremacist country, it's a terrorist country, really, it's where a lot of terrorists are from, who works for the UN, which is an inherently anti-Semitic organization, and on war crimes or other matters like that, which typically means accusing America and Israel of those things, one would want to know, well, is this woman the reason that there have been few, if any, charges made? It's an excellent question. And it comes not from mere speculation, but from this war between the mayor and the police chief. And so our friend Joe Warmington wrote about it in the Toronto Sun, and he did a good job. Holy smokes, did the police ever unleash on him? They sent a hail of emails threatening him in bizarre ways. But to their credit, the Toronto Sun stood by their man. It was quite something. Stephanie Sayer, the press attaché for the Toronto Police, said to Joe that there would be consequences to him if he continued to report it and didn't delete his stories. What does that mean? Would he be sued? Would he be arrested and maybe charged with something? No charges for the Hamas supporters, just charges for a journalist who embarrasses the police chief? Or would there be more? I mean, the police are packing heat. What would they do exactly to Joe? To the Sun's credit, they backed him up. We saw that and we thought, we have a lot of questions about this too. This is a real news story. So we deployed our big, beautiful Billboard truck, asking simple questions. Who is Falguni Debnath? Is she the reason that these charges are not made? Who's telling the truth? The mayor or the police chief? Here's a little look at David Menzies with our big, beautiful truck parked right outside police headquarters.
Hey, detective, is Miss Debnath setting policy for the police? Why are my questions instilling fear in the hearts of those who are packing heaters? I don't get it. Hi, ma'am. How you doing? Good. What do you think about the lawyer for the police service, Falguni Debnath, setting policy in terms of who to arrest and not to arrest?
To be honest, this is the first time I see this.
Oh, okay then. All right then.
Sorry about that.
Are you going to sign our petition to fire the chief?
I have to go now.
Oh,
so
okay then.
I have appointments.
Have a nice day. What do you think about the lawyer setting policing policy? No. No.
I feel that that's skipping due process, which should apply to everyone fairly and equally. So that's not fair, I would say.
I couldn't agree with you more, sir. I thought the whole idea of law enforcement is that when you see a crime, you make an arrest and you let the courts sort it out, right?
Gather the evidence and hand it over to the judge, and that's their job to weigh in on that, not anyone below them.
Lincoln Jay and I have been here for about half an hour. We got another half hour to go before college turns into a tow-away zone, and you know they would love to tow away this baby. That would be a trophy catch for them, wouldn't it? But it's funny, absolutely no engagement with any of the cops. I'll take that as a W. Compared to, getting arrested. Happened to me 5 times last year, 3 times by the Toronto Police Service. Happened to my boss, Ezra, once last year, just for practicing journalism in public. Hey guys, what do you think about Falguni Debnath? Is it okay that she's setting police policy? Hi, sir. What do you think about Falguni Debnath setting police policy?
Thanks, have a good day.
Okay, thank you. Merry Christmas. Hi, ma'am. What do you think of Falguni Debnath setting policy for the police? Is it me? Is my English not understandable? Or am I encountering a disproportionate number of deaf people working at police headquarters?
Well, holy smokes. Did the police effort to silence Joe ever backfire? Not only did Joe continue to write his story in the Toronto Sun, but we brought our beautiful Billboard truck, which cannot be missed. It's so big and bright, and every cop going in and out of the police headquarters would have seen it. Wouldn't surprise me if the police chief himself sort of peeked through the blinds to see that truck. Well, I think the police know better than to call us up and threaten us, but they contacted Joe again to threaten him. I mentioned the police spokesman, Stephanie Sayer, who said that the appearance of our truck was, quote, a direct result of Joe's reporting. So she was blaming the truck being there on Joe. In a way, I suppose it's indirectly true because we followed the story and learned about the police threat from Joe, and we acted on our own to deploy the truck. But holy smokes, a media aide, a media communications director who does not like the media and thinks she can silence them. Now, to their credit, they haven't tried to threaten me the same way they threatened Joe. And I think it's because Joe has sort of other bosses on top of him, whereas I suppose I only answer to our viewers. But a funny thing happened yesterday, and I want to be very careful how I describe it, because I was asked if I would take a phone call from a very, very senior person in the Toronto Police, and if I would take that phone call on a confidential basis and not report it. Would I take a phone call off the record? And I thought to myself, well, if I say no, I'm not going to get the phone call and I won't know anything. But if I take a phone call off the record without reporting it or recording it, at least I'll have some information that can color my other work. Even if I can't report it, I can know it, and I'd be no further behind. So I agreed to accept the phone call on those conditions, and I'm going to honor those conditions because I don't want people to think that if I agree to keep something private, that I'll break that promise. But let me just tell you, it was most astonishing, and I'll just sum it up by saying I was asked by this extremely senior person to withdraw the truck and no longer ask the questions. To which I said, well, has the mayor withdrawn her accusation? Because that's really all we're doing. You saw the truck. It's based on what the mayor said. The mayor says that this lawyer, Falguni Debnath, at the Toronto Police Station is the reason that none of these pro-Hamas types are getting charged. If the mayor still believes that, if she still says that, if she still accuses of that, I'm going to report that news. If the mayor recants and says I was mistaken, okay, we'll report that as well, and maybe we'll have to change up the truck. I have never in my 10 years of running Rebel News received a phone call like the one I received. And I'm not going to say any more to identify who it was, and I'm not going to particularize what was said. Suffice it to say that we were asked to take that truck down, and we weren't, and we didn't, rather. In fact, to make the point, we sent the truck out again today. What's going on here? What's going on here? Well, on the immediate level, there's an attempt to intimidate. I mean, I don't know. They must not know me if they think that a call from a big shot cop is going to make me afraid. I actually ended the phone call. I'll tell you what I said. I said, call anytime, and if you want to meet me, feel free to arrest me. That's what I said to him. I was being a little bit cheeky, but yeah, no, we don't roll over for anybody. If we do something that's wrong, and if you can convince us we've done something wrong, we'll correct it or retract it or whatever. I mean, every now and then we get it wrong, but we reported what the mayor said. We got it right. We don't take instructions from police. We're not in a police state. And in fact, we think the police in Toronto are not living up to their duties to arrest actual criminals. And you know that they've been arresting Rebel News reporters time and time and time again. I just made a joke about me being arrested, but in fact, I was arrested at that very intersection I've been describing to you at Bathurst and Shepherd. Here, remember when I was arrested?
Acting Inspector Ford told me they had a media area for you and you guys stayed in it.
We did
and
not.
And they came back.
We did not.
Well,
because it's not up to him to say you have free speech there, but not here.
Well, yeah, because you're inciting this crowd and then it breaches the peace. Well, your presence is inciting them, and that's exactly what you're trying to do.
I'm a Jew.
No, because you're trying to incite them.
I haven't tried to incite them. I want to take a picture of the hate crime that
you
you're
could have done it on the other side. You didn't need to walk over here.
No, I wanted to go out.
Okay, now I'm going to tell you to move over there, and if you don't cross the road, you'll get arrested for breach of the peace. Yeah.
Let's get that on there.
Yeah. So you're refusing to leave?
I'm refusing to leave.
Why?
Because I'm a Jew, I'm a citizen, and I'm your boss. And I don't leave because you say Jews aren't allowed on the streets.
In the interest of keeping peace here and public safety, you're under arrest for breach of the peace. Take a minute.
I was arrested for standing on the sidewalk. There was a horde of dozens of pro-Hamas activists who were standing right there, and they weren't arrested themselves. You see my point? Why would they arrest me? Did Falguni Debnath say, oh, you can arrest the Jew, but not the Muslims? What was the legal advice there, I wonder? Or our friend David Menzies, who's been arrested time and time again simply for reporting on these Hamas extremists. Here's a sample of some of those.
Don't touch them! Don't touch them! What's wrong with you guys? We told you, who are you guys? What do you mean, you guys? See this? Yeah, my grandfather spent 5 years of his life fighting the Nazis. You think I'm going to bend the knee to the Islamo-Nazis? No. What crime am I committing? No, come on. Enforce the law. Obey your oath, officer. Obey your oath. Yeah, let's go. You're enforcing Sharia law. What am I doing here? Huh? Hey! Goodbye! You're dealing with this. Back to your protest.
They're about to pray. They're about to pray. They're about to pray.
We're praying. No, God says you can pray anywhere you want to go. Start praying. Brother. It's okay. We offered you some food if you want to eat. This is the King's Highway. I'm not going to move. Hey, what is going on here? We just want you to What's the problem? Guys, excuse me. We're trying to put him behind the Hey, that's my guy. That's my guy. Stop. Public safety, you have to take Why don't you take care of the Stay back, guys. Stay back. Hey, stay back. Stop pushing forward. Everybody back.
Do you see why this is an important story? They're threatening Joe Warmington, and I think they tried to intimidate me, but either I was too stupid to understand it or too stubborn to go with it. They're trying to stop coverage, stop asking questions about the mayor's accusation that the police itself refused to prosecute pro-Hamas extremists. And in so doing, in making threats against Joe Warmington, I'm guessing they were trying to threaten me. I'm just too stupid to realize it. They were taking a harder line against peaceful journalism than they do against pro-Hamas activism. The fact that they arrested David time and again, and even arrested me, but wouldn't arrest these foreign nationals who are not only whipping up anti-Semitism, but are breaking the law in the ways I outlined earlier. Don't you think this is quite a news story after all? I should tell you the people of Toronto think so. Here's an image from the Toronto Sun website, which shows the hottest stories by view count. You might think that the story I've just described is a little bit of inside baseball that no one would care about. Well, if that's what you think, you'd be wrong. The number one story on the Toronto Sun website is precisely Joe Warmington describing this. I think we've got a problem in Toronto. We have some sort of blockage, and it rings true that it could be this Falguni Debnath. Alas, she isn't talking to any journalists, so all we have is our speculation and the mayor's accusation. I'm less concerned about politics and gossip and inside baseball than I am about the fact that every week these pro-Hamas activists take to the streets, and every night somewhere in the Greater Toronto area there is some anti-Semitic vandalism, shooting, Molotov cocktails in Montreal, vandalism of synagogues. That's actually what I'm worried about, and I'm worried that if someone like those Bondi Beach terrorists came to the idea that they were going to take steps and murder some Jews, they could find it easy to do so. In fact, I see in the papers today that there was a young man who was already caught up in our justice system, who was arrested with firearms and was planning to kill Jewish students, female, girl, Jewish students. He was planning on it, and he was arrested before he had a chance. Now, had he acted on his plans, I don't know if he could have been stopped. I truly think it's only a matter of time before one of the hundreds of thousands of extremist, anti-Semitic Muslim migrants to this country says, I'm going to do what ISIS encourages me to do, what Hamas encourages me to do, and what the hero and the martyrs in Australia did. I'm very worried about that. And I'm worried about that because nothing has been done. And if the reason nothing is being done is because of a Pakistani-born United Nations lawyer at the Toronto Police Service who stops any charges from being made, well, that's an important story to tell. And I'm glad the Toronto Sun is telling it. I'm glad Joe Warmington is not scared. And I'm glad I'm obviously too stupid to realize when I'm being threatened by a senior member of the police. Stay with us. More ahead.